Today we're having a look at all the ways that I can die in various games on the iPhone 12. On a serious note, we are looking at the Backbone 1 with Shadow PC on the iPhone 12 Pro running iOS 15. For this test I am using data just to see how good the connection is with Shadow PC at 50 megabits per second. You can see from my speed test that my 4G speed is pretty stable, but the jitter is a little bit higher at 2.2 milliseconds with a ping of 23. But 170 meg download is more than good enough here. I do want to note a couple of quirks using the Shadow desktop app on mobile, especially on iPhone, at least with Backbone 1, that it's on and off whether the controller works with certain actions. You can see dragging your finger on the screen doesn't do a mouse scroll, it actually does a drag action. So to get to some of the buttons like the start button, a lot of the time you need to zoom in. But once you're into some of the menus like the start bar here, the controller up down buttons do work. So as long as you've got the controller active, as soon as you use those menus, Backbone 1 is actually recognized as a specific controller on Shadow, so most of the actions do work. So you need to combine touch actions with the controller, especially on the desktop. And because Shadow PC is a full-blown virtual PC, you will get lumped with updates for apps as well as Windows. So do account for this when you're about to start up a game and make sure that you leave yourself a bit of time to do any updates. So let's dive into Arc. So the start screen here, the controller does not work at all, except if you press Y, it does sign you in. However, there is no way to press start using the controller, so what you actually have to do is tap on it twice with the touch screen, and that will finally get you through to the menu, and then you can use the controller to join the servers. And from that point forward, the controller works perfectly fine, and did not notice any input latency with Backbone 1. However, the controller sensitivity on the sticks for Shadow is a little bit sensitive, so it does take a little bit of getting used to, and you get a little bit more jerky movements. The other thing that I notice on Shadow is there does seem to be the occasional stutter. It wasn't so bad with Arc, but you'll see it in some of the later games. And it was a bit distracting in longer gameplay, as you would get this micro stutter every now and then that kind of just jarred the experience a little bit. But otherwise the graphics looked extremely good here, and Arc played very well. So I'm going to move on to a game called Undefeated. This is a little known game, but actually an incredibly fun free to play game on Steam, which effectively makes you a superhero, very much like Superman. So not only can we fly around, and we can see that we're getting a solid 60 frames per second a lot of the time, we can do some thunderclap style moves to extinguish fires and use super strength to save people from being trapped under huge rocks. There are procedurally generated events for this game, but there are also some missions which I've not gone into in this demonstration, but I just wanted to highlight this game as a fun little fly around game and something to keep an eye on in future, as we could see huge potential here. As you can see, the world is not particularly huge, but Shadow PC and the Backbone 1 performing very well there, and as you can see, the occasional micro stutter which I'm talking about, which doesn't affect this sort of game too much, but can affect driving style games, which you'll see a bit later on. So let's move over to Grand Theft Auto 5. This is probably one of the most requested games on a lot of cloud services. Shadow PC being able to run GTA 5 without an issue, and fortunately he's not vomiting at the motion sickness of playing on a phone. And this is where that micro stutter really starts becoming apparent. For GTA 5 it was really quite bad for me. And as you'll see when I'm driving, there'll be some movements where it almost just jams the controls to turn left or right, which will then send you slamming into walls when you're just trying to dodge around a car. And other times where it looks like you've got enough clearance, but then suddenly you hit the car. So there was some strange maneuvers. There we go, that stutter there where it just kind of pile drives me into the central reservation when all I did was a small maneuver left or right. This was really apparent on driving at high speed, so even though Shadow PC was showing 80 plus frames per second and the CPU and GPU being around 50%, it must be something interrupting the stream because there's no controller lag. It just seemed to be an issue when their controls just seemed to either get stuck on or off in the stream. This wasn't apparent in a lot of the other games, but when you've got constant movement like this, it does become quite apparent. So GTA 5 all in all looking great and performing very well on the iPhone with Backbone 1, but that micro stutter on Shadow PC really did cause me a few problems. So let's look at another free-to-play game. This is a brand new game called Blood Hunt that is on the Steam store now, which is a new style battle royale where you are vampires with special abilities, all hunting each other in a unique PvP PvE style. As there are NPCs, there are dumb humans that you can feed off to regenerate your health, as well as armed civilians that if you do get caught sucking people's blood, will hunt you down and also highlight you on the map to all of your enemies. So the aim of the game is to stay alive the longest, but there's also the extra element of taking down some high value targets to gain some extra special abilities as well, like regeneration, increased damage and a lot more. So do check out Blood Hunt, it did work extremely well. Again, the controls for this were a little bit twitchy on the left and right, so you will need to tweak your movement. And this is what I mean with these NPCs that can hunt you down. And you'll see later on some of the actual vampires running around as well. They just steered clear of this area for now. But the graphics working perfectly well, and it was capped at 60 frames per second in this game to keep the stable frame rate. And we do see the occasional dip, but otherwise performing extremely well here. However, I will warn you, Blood Hunt is not a very forgiving game, and there are already some very good players in the game. So if you do dive in, as it is free to play, prepare to die quite a lot. Moving over to Chivalry 2, this is one of my favourite games on the PC to date. It is just a riot to play, and playing on the iPhone 12 with Backbone 1 was extremely satisfying because this is a great game for controller, especially for these sweeping movements of things like the heavy attacks and parries. Makes it so satisfying to play, and just look how smooth this was. For some reason the frames per second overlay didn't show on Chivalry 2, but it did feel like a solid 60 plus frames per second. However, there was still that micro stutter occasionally on Shadow, which did ruin the experience a little bit, but Chivalry 2 is just so much fun that even when you die, half the time it's pretty funny and you don't mind it and want to just dive back in and see if you can take revenge. As you can see, it's all out mayhem, the graphics looking extremely clear and clean here. Playing on Shadow PC does give you that advantage of having the PC graphics in the palm of your hand. So all in all, Shadow PC working extremely well on the iPhone 12 Pro, running iOS 15 on mobile data connection. However, those micro stutters can get a little bit annoying, and hopefully this is something that they will fix soon. I know that they have had a notice saying that they've had intermittent issues on their networks for a while now, so hopefully they will get this resolved so we get more stable connections. However, it will be hit or miss whether you suffer this issue or whether you get a nice clear experience. Let us know in the comments below if you've seen anything similar on Shadow PC and what controller you're using on iPhone. And if you're going to pick up a Backbone 1, we'd really appreciate you using the links in the description below. Thanks for watching, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all things cloud gaming, and we will see you next time.